Hi everyone, Bandanner here. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to do a first UK Armoured Division deck build. It's been about a year, if not longer, since I've done one of these. Within that, I do build decks every month and every other month for these divisions, but I don't always post them. On my channel would just be nothing but deck build videos, which would be kind of boring. There are 2 tournaments coming up in October, now that we've got a decent patch. So we've got a 2v2 tournament with War, and we've got the 1v1 monthly with SD League. So there's going to be loads of games to cast, so October should be a really good month for that, for anyone who's interested. Okay, let's build this deck. So, straight away, Bedford supply trucks ×2. You know me, I like my ground-based supply, they're going in there. The Chinook is definitely an option. I would put that in potentially for a 1v1 deck build, and that gives me 16,000 supply overall. But in a team game deck, and technically in 10v10, which is more what I'll probably play this deck with, I don't need it. I think that's enough supply, because probably someone on your team will have a field supply depot, and you can probably use that. Command vehicle, I'm going to go for the Rover for the speed. The Sultan can take a tiny bit more punishment, but it is slower. And realistically, right now, laser-guided bombs are going to be what hit these things, and they're going to die in one hit anyway. So, I'll stick with the Rover for its speed. Infantry. I would completely ignore any of the forward deployment stuff. The reason for that is you have no way to protect them. Chances are the enemy will either have forward deployment stuff, or they're going to send helicopters. A helicopter is enough to stall these guys, and you have no anti-air to send with them. You get no forward deployment anti-air. You don't get a helicopter that can get there fast that has anti-air either. In terms of your aircraft, you have some decent aircraft, but using those against the attack choppers now doesn't guarantee you a kill, and you could be sending them on a suicide mission. And right at the start of the game, that would be a mistake. So, right now, I would ignore all of this down here. I would grab yourself the Milan too. I think that's the best long-range stuff you're going to get in terms of an infantry, and I always like to take one if I can. What else do we want to take? Arm rifles, get the Warrior and the Warrior Milan. The Warrior Milan isn't terrible. The Milan is technically scary, because you don't know what's coming at you, so I would actually take these guys in the Warrior Milan. Now, I wouldn't actually rank them up. So, previously, my thing was always to rank stuff up, but you get so few infantry availability in this deck that I would take them just as unranked, just trained, because at least that way you get 9. Now, you get 7 guys in that squad. Rifles, you get 8. And they're a really good unit as well. I wouldn't bother taking them in this thing. I would take them in a Bedford truck. I'd stick a stack of those in as well. Again, don't rank them up. In terms of your close range, you've only got Assault Pioneers. Now, they're not the worst thing in the world, and they're not the best thing in the world, but I will take them on the basis that they're the only thing that's really close range. And the satchels will do a lot of damage, but you have to get them close to the enemy. So this is all about positioning, and preferably using in towns, because a good player is going to run away from them. So towns, good, throwing from building to building. You've got to get them close, remember though, that is a short distance, 150 meters. Okay. Now, there isn't really enough room for me to say take an infantry command in this deck, in all honesty. So we start looking at what else we can take. You got the gun group, which are nice and cheap, and they can come in a Warrior Milan. So we've got a very cheap squad. They're only a 4-man squad though, so bear that in mind. You're mostly getting these for the Warriors. Whether you get the Warrior or the Warrior Milan is up to you. It makes them 5 points more. I would take some of those in the Warrior Milan, personally. And you've got loads of Warrior Milans, and that's 18 Warrior Milans. What else do we take? Well, we've also got the Assault Pioneers with the Carl Gustav, which are 50 points. Or we get these guys. These are basically the same squad, okay? Except these are 5 points more, and you get the Law 80. And I think the Law 80 is just very good. These guys have 5 points less. And the Carl Gustav is fine. But when you can take more rifles, I would take more rifles, personally. I don't know about anyone else, but I would take more rifles. So there we go. Another squad of rifles. Royal Military Police aren't horrendous. Please bear in mind that this number is fictitious. because that is the salvo accuracy. Their actual accuracy is like 30% per shot. So just keep that in mind. They're not horrendous for 15 points. And obviously, there was a time when the military police thing came in handy, but I wouldn't bother taking them. The 7.60mm isn't good enough right now. Don't waste your time with it. What I would suggest here is either take another set of gun groups for the warriors, or possibly just take more arm rifles. I think we'll go with more arm rifles, and again, we take them in the Warrior Milan. As you can see here, I'm going with lots of squads that have multiple machine guns. So right now, squads with multiple machine guns seem to be performing reasonably well. So it's, you know, worth taking these. There's squads, obviously, the Americans get with 3 machine guns. They're also doing very well. But there we go. So Milan 2, 2 sets of arm rifles, 2 sets of rifles, and a gun group. Assault Pioneers. I and ah always over those, but they're the only close range option you get, really. Artillery, well, I mean, mortars are always nice. The Abbott just doesn't do enough for me, so I will take the M1 and 9. I'd actually be tempted to take 2 stacks of those. And then some mortars, and I'd just take these ones, because they're all 81mm. I'd probably use them for smoking more than anything else, and that's all 3 of those slots filled. They're all 1-point slots. If we need an extra point at the end, I would remove one of the M109s. Tanks. So, Challenger Mark II Command Tank, Challenger Mark II Command Tank. Rank up the Challenger Mark IIs, and we're going to take 4 stacks of those. That gives us 8, 9, 10 Challenger Mark IIs. That is a lot of tanks, basically. We've got the Chieftain Mark 11 command. If you are taking this in a 1v1 situation, I would highly recommend taking Command Chieftains as well. You could take both of those if you wanted, and then take some Command Chieftains as well. Remember, you want 5 to 10 commands for a 1v1 game. So if you're going to be doing 1v1 deck, I would take those. I'm not, so I'm not going to. It's as simple as that. However, I'm saying right now, if you are, take the Command Chieftains. You will not regret it. Okay, then we have to make a decision between the Chieftain Mark 11 and the Chieftain Mark 9. Now, the big thing here is obviously the distance. So they both have 20 pen at that max distance, which means the Chieftain Mark 11 is actually a lot stronger compared to that in terms of its gun. For 10 points more. You have to weigh up which one you would take. I will take the Chieftain Mark 11. I would actually take 2 stacks of those. That gives us 8 of those. So we've got 8 of these, 8 of these, and 2 commands. I think that's enough in there. Let's move on and we can always come back. Recon. So, autocannons work again. The Foxes are always fun. Let's stick those guys in there. We won't rank them up. We have some scouts, and we have scouts with a law 80. The scouts with a law 80 obviously can do a lot of damage. They're going to be quite effective if you need to get them close to enemy vehicles. But obviously, you don't always want these things in combat. SAS Patrol, lots of stuff here. Okay, they get GSR and everything, so they're going in on that basis. Just bear in mind, they've got a satchel charge. These guys are not to go against vehicles. But I do want something with ground surveillance radar, so they go in. You've got the Scimitar here as well, which also has a Radan, so can be considered, just not as fast as the Fox. Then, do you take the Scouts or the Scouts Law? They do come in a Spartan. Both can come in a Spartan. Oh, it's a challenge whether you bring them in a Spartan, which one you bring. I mean, 9 of those, 6 of those. I think 6 is probably enough, to be fair. And for the fact that if anyone does get close to them in a vehicle, they are dead. Do you take them in the Spartan for that extra vision? No, let's keep them cheap by bringing them in a sellable vehicle. And there's room here with a 2-point slot to take something else, actually. I'm very tempted by a Scimitar now that the cannons are working again. It is tempting here. Although we don't have a Recon chopper, and they do come in handy. That is definitely a difficult decision. I'm going to stick the chopper in there. Just for fast response on bigger map. Okay, anti-air, Javelin LML, and then Rapier. This is difficult whether you take both tracked rapiers or not. I think I will. But we have the option of removing one and gaining 2 points back, so we'll keep that in mind. Helicopters. Is it really worth taking the Gazelle rockets? I mean, they come in handy sometimes, but they're not the be-all and end-all, and they die in one hit. These guys are reasonable with the Ito. I think if you're going to take one, you take the Ito, and I think probably some Gazelle rockets as well. It fills those 2 1-point slots, and if you can catch someone out with the Gazelle rockets, then they will do a lot of damage. They just don't have many rockets, that's the only issue with them. Okay, aircraft. Fairly straightforward, for me, I think anyway. I'd take Tornadoes ×2. In terms of their price versus capability, they're probably one of the best jets in the game. A few people say this. It's not just me making that up, by the way. A few people say this. They're a very good price, and they have reasonably good stats. They're a good unit. We also have Seed in there, which we're going to want because we don't get any radar AA, so we want to be able to operate everywhere with our Tornadoes. The 30% ECM helps, but obviously having a Seed plane will also assist with that. In a 10v10, it's always difficult because there's so much AA, but in team games, it's going to come in very handy to have that Seed to allow our Tornadoes to operate. Then we have to think about bombers. Harriers, they're a no-go for me right now in team games, and especially 10v10s, because there's so much AA and they die in one hit to a lot of the heavy radar AA. So just no. Not going with those anymore. Bad experience. Tornadoes, good jets, nice big HE bombs. But you also get nice big HE bombs with the Jaguar. I would definitely take one of these two. They're the same price. Bear that in mind. So you're looking at other stats. A Tornado has more bombs and it's faster. For me, that's the thing. What I can't remember is if the Jaguar is a dive bomber off the top of my head. So dive bombers obviously have the advantage that they dive down and are going to generally hit their target. The disadvantage is they're getting very close to anti-air units when they do that. So they're more of a risk. Either way, I think I'm going to go for the Tornado. I may regret that later, but I'm going to take the Tornado. 46 points. We're doing pretty well here in terms of points, to be honest. I think at this stage we take the cluster as well. The rocket is also tempting because rockets can be very annoying. But again, it's very situational. They're going to dive on their target. I think we take the cluster. Bear in mind that these Tornadoes obviously have an aim 9, so they can still engage air targets or helos. So logistics, we've got the 2 Bedford supply trucks. That gives us 10,000 supply in total, plus the Rover Command for speed. Then we've got a Milan 2, so that gives us our long-range defense. We don't get any other long-range defense here like a recoilless rifle. We've gone for 2 sets of arm rifles in the Warrior Milan. We're wanting the Warriors for the Milan and the autocannon. Bear in mind that we're wanting to use those more defensively than aggressively most of the time, but they can be used aggressively as well. But just that extra threat of the Milans coming out at stuff that tries to rush you or charge at you. The rifles, obviously your mainstay troops, very good units, along with that Law 80. Going to be very good in forests or buildings where you're encouraging the enemy to come close and then you spring on them with the Law 80 and do some serious damage. Gun group are kind of cheap cannon fodder, but good harassment, and the fact they're coming in a warrior is just adding to their damage potential. But again, I kind of want that more for the Warrior Milan. The gun group can just go in willy-nilly if necessary, but the Warrior Milan is really what I want from that. The Assault Pioneers are your only close-range option, in terms of they have a close-range weapon, the Satchel Charge. It is not the be-all and end-all. You could probably live without it, but it will be a benefit in towns if you can get them close to the enemy. Artillery, 2 M109s and just some standard mortars. Tanks, we've got 2 Challenger Mark II command tanks, 8 Challenger Mark IIs, and then 8 Chieftain Mark 11s. Centurion Mark V AVRE isn't bad, by the way, but I tend to manage without it. But it's not bad, it will do a lot of damage to infantry. The Swingfire and the Striker, the accuracy isn't good enough for me to even bother with that. The Milan 2 here isn't bad, but it's quite pricey. It has the advantage of good stealth though, so if you did want to take something like that, it's definitely an option, but I'd rather have the Challengers, to be honest. Recon, I think you can mix and match here. I've gone with what I fancied, namely the Fox, but easily you could take the Scimitar here. I have seen it performing pretty well with the autocannon fix. SAS Patrol, because I want that ground surveillance radar. Scouts with a Law 80, those can be the more upfront ones to the SAS Patrol, which are going to be sitting back. These guys, a little bit more up close and personal, can do some damage if necessary. And then the Gazelle is just to cover the flanks when that is necessary, I guess. You could remove that, to be honest, and have 2 extra points to spend elsewhere. That is definitely an option. I'm going to leave it in, though. Anti-air, Javelin LML, and 2 sets of tracked rapiers. I feel like the tracked rapiers are very good. They're not amazing. They were better when they were fire and forget, but they're still reasonably good. And the LMLs fire faster than the standard Javelin, that's why they're in there. Helicopters, you don't have a lot of choice here. The Hellarm is because it has the ITO, which is better than nothing, and the rockets just for a bit of harassment. You can catch people out. And then aircraft, as I say, Tornado F3, very, very good. Tornado Seed, because you want to be able to operate your tornadoes as much as possible. And then the same with the bombers, I guess, in this particular division. You're going to want to be able to operate these and do some damage to incoming enemies. I think the 1st UK Armoured is a good division. I think it lacks a little bit in its infantry, but you can make it work, definitely. And especially in team games and 10v10s, you can definitely make it work. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for some more WARNO.